Spoiler warning, if you haven't seen Daredevil Born Again, don't watch this video until after you've seen the first episode on Disney Plus. So I was so happy when Daredevil was coming back because that show was easily the best out of all of the Netflix shows that were made with Marvel. I absolutely loved it, and I was devastated when season 3 came out and it got canceled after that. I was just crushed and heartbroken, and then when I found out the news later on that they're going to bring back Daredevil, and the fact that it was originally going to be a courtroom drama scene and it wasn't going to have Foggy or Karen in it, I was really starting to feel disappointed until eventually Kevin Feige said, no, this isn't working. We're throwing this all out and starting over from scratch, and we're going to make this be a continuation of the Netflix series. That really got me excited again. And the thing that I'm so impressed with this show is you can tell that it has a brand new creative team, but they're doing new stuff, and yet they're still honoring the legacy of what came before, and they're still doing new things to punch it up, to elevate it, make it feel different, and yet still feel like, yes, this is still the same characters, this is the continuation of the show, but it's also, I love how different the cinematography feels. Everything just feels elevated. Like, you can really feel how much of a bigger budget they've got now that this is just full on Disney and Marvel providing the budget. You can tell that they're using more ambitious shots. They're using wider frames. And I like that they also added some really clever cinematography when it comes to Matt Murdock's senses. Like the way that they showcase his hearing, it's just really cool because that's something that we haven't really gotten to see too much on the Netflix show, but seeing those little moments like showing his hearing, focusing in on the news segment on the TV, or trying to hear him listen to Foggy's phone call outside of Josie's bar. It's all these little things that really makes it feel like the Daredevil comics truly come to life. I also really enjoyed that opening fight scene between Daredevil and Bullseye. Like, he is fully transformed into the full Bullseye that we were promised at the end of season 3 with that after credit scene, but here he is on full-on display, showing his accuracy, the way he just throws objects and can hit everything perfectly. But I also loved showing how deranged he is by doing one of the ballsiest things ever. They actually showing him shooting and then eventually killing Foggy Nelson. That was such a huge shock to the system as I was watching it, and I also loved just how much the stakes were high because you could tell Matt cares about his friend, but he's still Daredevil and he has to fight Bullseye, and so he can't just stop and check on him. And so just feeling that tension, it was just amazing just going through that, like seeing, like, holy crap, they have the balls to actually do this. And man, it was absolutely heartbreaking. And then you could see that get elevated even more when Matt just throws Bullseye off the fucking roof. Like, that was just like, I couldn't believe it when that happened, because the one thing that Daredevil says he would never do, and he actually did it because because, I mean, just imagine, how would you feel if your best friend was murdered by a fucking psychopath? And just seeing how you would feel in that moment. Like, just, I understand why Matt did it, and it really showcases his character, like, in that moment. Just seeing, nope, I don't care anymore. And I just loved how subtle it was done. It's like he just screams, "Why?" and then just pushed him off the roof like that. But you could tell, like, from all of that enhancements that Bullseye got at the end of season 3, we thought that he was dead. But I also loved that moment where Karen was still, you know, crying over Foggy, trying to, you know, hold his bullet wound, and yet she heard that, you could just hear the horror, you could just see the horror in her face when she heard that body fall to the floor. You thought, oh my god, did Matt just die? And then you could see, she sees, no, Matt, or they thought, oh my god, Matt just killed Bullseye. But then you see him wake up, and man, it was like, that was one of the absolute ballsiest things to do for the opening of a revival and continuation of a TV show, is killing off a central character like that. But I feel like, yes, it stings, and yes, as a fan of this show from the very beginning, when season 1 started 10 years ago, I was absolutely crushed and devastated and in pure shock to see that. But I understood why the writers did that, because they wanted to be bold and prove, hey, just because we're back, it doesn't mean we're not going to take any risks, because it was a risk. But I also enjoyed seeing how that 1 year later setup really showed just how much has changed, and seeing Matt move on, and seeing how he was able to open up a new firm with Kirsten. And in some ways, I almost felt like that was him almost honoring Foggy's memory, because you could tell it's like Foggy was interested in Kirsten. And so Matt deciding to open up a firm with her, you know, staying friends with her, going into business with her, seeing Matt being successful as a lawyer, having a large office, having a higher profile as a lawyer. I felt like that was pretty satisfying to see, seeing Matt move up in his career as a lawyer. But at the same time, you can see how crushed he was, seeing that I cannot be Daredevil again after all of that. And that moves on to the next point, where we get to see the courtroom scene, and we get to see that Foggy, after Foggy's murder, you get to see that Bullseye is sentenced to life in prison, and you can just see how much Matt is still in pain, because you got to see during his testimony, you got to see Karen walk into the courtroom, and it's clear they haven't seen each other for a really long time. And that was just seeing him hesitate right there, seeing one of his best friends again, while at the same time trying to keep himself together, because he's still Matt Murdock, and he can't just go full on rage mode like he would as Daredevil. I just thought that was brilliant to see that. And seeing that conversation in the hall afterwards between Matt and Karen, like, you can see how devastating it was that Foggy's death led to them isolating apart from each other. And you can see that Matt's trying to reconnect with Karen, but Karen just can't move on from it. And it's really fascinating to see what happens next. I hope this is not the last we see of Karen in the show, but you can tell, like, in some ways, that's the real difference between this new show and the previous run on Netflix. Is they're trying to do new things, and one way of doing that was by killing Foggy and seeing Matt and Karen's friendship pretty much fall apart. Like, it makes sense for the show, showing the difference in this show, seeing how time has passed, but it's also very different too, because we get to see this is a new show, and you get to see how different we're in a different stage of these lives for all these characters. And that brings me on to talking about Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. It was great, that opening shot, seeing him upside down, but you can tell, he's dieting, he's slimmed down, he's just eating a small chicken breast and one piece of asparagus. I thought that was pretty interesting, but also you get to see just how menacing it was, because the next shot, you get to see the meetings between the gangs, and you can see Vanessa was right there too. That you can see Vanessa has taken over Kingpin's businesses, but you can also tell that they're separated. And for me, that was huge, because you can tell that time has passed, people have moved on, and you can see that Vanessa has taken Kingpin's criminal empire and has elevated it. And I kind of like how that's showcasing the difference with Fisk here, is that he's now running for mayor, and he's trying to separate himself from his criminal empire. And you could just feel that something sinister is brewing. Like, he's putting on the image, he's putting on the face that he wants to do good, he wants to change his public image, but you just have this deep brewing feeling that, man, something sinister's gonna happen with Kingpin. I don't know what it is, but you could just feel like the very shallow dread where right now it's simmering, but at some point it's gonna turn into a full-on boil. And I am fascinated to see where Kingpin's run as mayor, what this is all going to lead down to. And I also loved the scene with Matt meeting his new love interest, Helen. I really loved how Kirsten is trying to set up Matt on a date with her, but trying to disguise it as an appointment, because she wants to help him move on, wants to help him try to start up his dating life again. And I loved seeing this side of Matt, because you didn't really get to see it too much on the Netflix series, because in the comics, Matt Murdock is, as the kids these days would say, a full-on player, or someone who has a lot of riz. And I just cringed out saying that fucking word out loud. But I loved how you could see him flip, where Matt and Helen were both professionals. And at first I thought that that Matt was actually going to start seeing a therapist. And I thought, wow, that's going to be very interesting to see what that's going to look like. But seeing them flip, realize Kirsten's trying to set them up on a date, and seeing like how well they're getting along with each other, seeing that flip, how professionally they wouldn't necessarily get along, but you could see, like, romantically, you can see the seeds getting planted. I thought that was a pretty clever way of showing that. And I loved that scene with Matt and Kingpin, or I should say Matt and Fisk, sitting down. Like, we got to see this scene in the trailer, but seeing the full-on scene play out, it was just a treat. It was just like watching De Niro and Pacino in Heat, just the two bitter rivals sitting down there in the diner, and I loved how you could tell they were trying to showcase that, yeah, they're trying to change, yeah, they're trying to be good, but you can tell down deep inside, even though this is Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk, at the end of the day, this is still Daredevil and Kingpin. And man, I just loved how at first, it was a little bit cordial, and I loved that they even referenced Maya when he said, "Well, didn't she shoot you in the face?" And they both laugh. I thought that was pretty clever, but I also just loved how he said that if you truly are trying to do good and try to be better, I'll support that, but I also believe in retribution. I just thought that was just a mic dropper of a line right there. And yeah, that was just a fantastic scene. And now that Fisk is mayor, I cannot wait to see what happens next. And this is a 2-episode premiere, but I wanted to spend videos talking all about, just spending one video dedicated to each episode. But man, I'm just absolutely blown away by this first episode. It completely exceeded all my expectations, and I love this new direction for Daredevil. I love that the show is back, but they're not just resting on their laurels. They're really trying to do new things with it and continue it while still showing that, hey, yeah, this is the same show, but we're still going to do new stuff with it. And I loved it, and I absolutely cannot wait to see this series continue and see what this whole season is going to be like.